Okay, let me say a nice thing about it. The only thing that was nice about it was that it was under 200 pages, and so I didn't waste any more of my life than was absolutely necessary taking my time to read it. Is 2026 the year where I'm cursed to read garbage books with poor endings? Because it's really starting to feel that way. But before I get to that, hey, my name is Frank. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about all things bookish. So today I'm going to be talking about In the Shadow of Spindrift House by Mira Grant. And I'm going to do things a bit differently than I normally do. Typically, I'd give an overview of the books and then talk about the elements that I want to discuss. But today I'm going to try things a bit differently and we'll see how that works out. I'll read the synopsis from Goodreads and then I'll just dive right into it. We'll go piece by piece. So here we go. And I'll just throw that up on the screen so you can read it too. For Harlow Upton Jones, life has never been a straight line. Shipped off to live with her paternal grandparents after a mysterious cult killed her mother and father, she has grown up chasing the question behind the curve, becoming part of a tight-knit teen detective agency. But teen is a limited time offer, and when her friends start looking for adult professions, it's up to Harlow to find them one last case so that they can go out in a blaze of glory. Welcome to Spindrift House. The stories and legends surrounding the decrepit property are countless and contradictory, but one thing is clear. There are people willing to pay a great deal to determine the legal ownership of the house. When Harlow and her friends agree to investigate the mystery behind the manor, they do so on the assumption that they'll be going down in history as the ones who determined who built Spindrift House and why. The house has secrets. They have the skills, they have a plan, they have everything they need to solve the mystery. Everything they need except for time. Because Spindrift House keeps its secrets for a reason and has no intention of letting them go, nature abhors a straight line. Here's where the story bends. All right, so that's pretty much what this book is about. Just a quick PSA because I forgot to mention it. This review does contain spoilers, so if you have not read the book, keep that in mind. So the book opens up to this weird aside about how nature abhors straight lines, right? About how nature is all about curves and all about spirals, and that this house in small town Maine is an affront to nature. Okay. It goes on and on and on and on about straight lines and how hideous they are and all this. It then goes on to explain how no one knows who built the house and that there are a couple things that are clear. It was an outsider who came in and built it, and that they died shortly after the house was finished with its construction. So it goes into a bit of the lore about the origin stories of this house. So right off the bat, we know this is going to be a haunted house trope. Great, cool, fine, excellent. We're into it. I struggled with staying interested during these opening chapters about straight lines and blah blah blah. I literally kept falling asleep. I shit you not. I kept falling asleep, and the next night I would like reread and reread, and I couldn't. I was like, okay, fuck it. Apparently, who cares? Ends up not really even being that important. So there's that. Like, why do you need to keep harping about straight lines and curves and nature? Because like it didn't really end up being that important to the story at all. So then after this chapter, this opening about straight lines and whatnot, we get to our main character, Harlow, and she is introducing us to her group, her ragtag team of, teenage sleuths, and they have been solving mysteries since they were in middle school. And she talks about how adults and the police used to kind of let them get away with it because they were helping out and they were successful in solving these mysteries. But as they got older, it was more frowned upon and they were considered to be more annoying, more invasive. Think Scooby-Doo without the talking dog and have grown up out of high school.
And I would have succeeded too if it weren't for you meddling schoolmates of mine.
Which brings us to the main problem of the book. This group of now 19 or 20-year-olds is forced to think about their future and realizing that they can no longer maintain their little group of mystery solvers. And they're being forced to reckon with this idea of growing up, of outgrowing this important phase of all four of their lives. Now, for over half of this book, I thought this was YA. So you can imagine how annoyed and shocked I was when I actually found that this is an adult horror fiction novel. I have no idea how we got there. This was reading as very young adult to me, and I don't mean that as a compliment. I enjoy young adult fiction. I have no issue with it when I'm going in with the knowledge and understanding that it is YA. If you are writing an adult fiction novel that reads like YA, you are doing your job badly. And here, this is what Libby says about this. Okay, I even looked it up. This is an adult fiction novel, so take it up with the author, I guess. So we meet our main character, Harlow, and she is going on about this group dynamic literally forever. So her parents were murdered, and this is what kind of initiates her desire to solve mysteries. And then she goes to live with her paternal grandparents in Chicago, which is where she meets all of her other friends at a young age. I think she's in like third grade or something, very young when this all happens. So we have the Tanaka twins, Addison and Andrew or Andy, and we have Kevin, who is friend turned brother when his mother basically adopts Harlow after her grandparents kind of get out of the picture. The author spends the first third of this book going over group dynamics, but offers absolutely no substance. I am not kidding when I say that. If I had to take a shot every single time Harlow tells us throughout the book, oh, Kevin is my brother, Kevin is my brother, Kevin is my brother, I would be drunk for a week straight. And then she proceeds to not show us anything about their relationship, their closeness, their dynamic. There are like maybe 2 points. One when he's offering to smoke her out later on, and then another time when he's trying to get her out of the house. That's about it. Otherwise, all we know is that she feels so close to him because she just keeps telling us about it. She doesn't show us that at all, which kind of ties into my other feeling, which is how Harlow is supposedly in love with Addison and has been in love with her for years, but they barely interact with each other throughout the book. And anytime they do actually interact, they are very shallow, nothing ass interactions. If anything, they seem to dislike each other for the majority of this book. I do not get, oh, I'm in love with you, I'm fawning over you, blah, 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 blah. I'm getting like, we barely tolerate each other. And if I'm being honest, this felt like queer tokenization to me. It felt like their relationship was nothing and that it could be interchanged between any gender, like there was nothing about this that screamed sapphic lesbian longing to me. Now, I don't want to speak on Grant's life or her experience. I don't know anything about her as a person, as an author. So, forgive me if I'm just making the assumption that she decided she wanted to tokenize a queer relationship. But this dynamic between Addison and Harlow felt very hollow and it felt very inconsistent throughout the book. So after we spend the first 35% of this book talking about group dynamics and just being beaten over the head with, oh, I'm in love with her. Oh, he's my brother. Oh, I'm in love with her. Oh, he's my brother. And then it's hardly shown at all. We don't see any of it. Our group of meddlesome teens embark on their road trip from Chicago to Port Mercy, Maine, because they're going to figure out the mystery of the Spindrift house. Now, if you remember, there are 3 families that are trying to claim ownership of this house, and one of these families happen to be the Uptons, which, dun dun dun, Marlowe's maternal family, right? These 3 families have hired private investigators to try to find the original deed to the house, but unfortunately, these private investigators have had major accidents or they have died mysteriously, and so now it's up to our group of teens to figure this out. So not only is Harlow using this as her last ditch effort to keep her group together so that they can continue to be, private investigators and whatnot, but this is also her last chance to find out what happened to her parents, how they were murdered, and, find out a bit more about her family history. So during this 3-day long road trip, nothing of substance happens at all. I'm serious, like literally nothing. The author somehow managed to drag this out over the course of like 2 to 3 chapters and still give us nothing. We learn what an anxious mess Kevin is and that he enjoys raising his, family farm chickens and that he smokes a lot of weed. He is anxious to the point of dysfunction, like cannot cope, so all he does is smoke weed. We never learn why. We never learn anything about his character as to how he became this anxious person. And you would think that if you're going to spend a third of the book discussing the characters and their dynamics with one another and their history, that you could maybe let the reader know why he's so anxious. But nope, as far as the reader knows, he just is. And if you think about it, that's weird because that level of anxiety doesn't just stem from nothing. There is usually a medical or traumatic reason why someone harbors that level of anxiety. Like, because the author goes on and on about this throughout the book, how fucking anxious he is all of the time. And it's like, okay, why? Nobody's just that anxious for no reason. There's usually something behind that, but we don't ever get to find out what that is. Now, this falls into one of my main criticisms, which is that these characters have absolutely no dimension at all. Addison is the ringleader who is in charge of the logistics of their, mysteries and sleuthing. Kevin is the anxious pothead who likes to raise his chickens. Harlow is pretty much like the only merit to her character. She's interested in Addison romantically, and she likes solving mysteries. And then there's Andy, Addison's twin brother, who is nothing. Literally has absolutely no discerning characteristics at all, is barely shows up in the book, has absolutely no function other than later on in the book when the ghost of the house is possessing his corpse to talk to Harlow. Other than that, he didn't even need to be included in the book. You did not notice his presence at all. He was nothing. He was nobody. He had literally nothing going on. That's weird when you think about the fact that they've all been friends for like 10 plus years, right? Anyway, really quick, if you're enjoying this video so far, go ahead and give it a like, maybe subscribe if you're into more bookish content, blah, blah, blah. You get the picture. Here we go. So back to the road trip, right? The first couple of nights, Harlow is experiencing this level of anxiety, she's having nightmares, she's unable to sleep through the night. And so on the second night, Kevin offers to smoke her out. And of course, she's like, yeah, okay, why not? So they head to the pool and they take 2 blunts to the face. Okay, for Kevin, I get it. He smokes a lot. That seems pretty on point. For someone like Harlow, who, as far as we know, does not smoke that much, taking 2 blunts to the face is serious work. That is, especially when you consider this is like dispensary weed. This ain't no fucking shitty middies. This is like legitimate dispensary weed, which the author refers to it as the weed store. I thought that was kind of strange. I've never heard anybody call it the weed store per se, but I'm going to get into that right now. So the security guard catches them, right? And instead of busting them, Kevin bribes him with, and I quote, a couple hits of his joint. So which is it? Is it blunts or is it a joint? Because if you smoke weed, you know that those are 2 very different things. They are 2 totally different things. Now, is it possible that Kevin decided to roll a joint after they smoked their 2 blunts and the author just didn't write that part out? Yeah, that's totally possible. But the way that this was written and the way that it was all phrased, it sounded like she was using the term blunt and the term joint interchangeably, which was really fucking annoying. And when you take into account the fact that she called it a weed store, and then throughout the book, she refers to his edibles as magic cookies, magic cookies, magic brownies, magic cookies, magic cookies. I think she calls them edibles like 1 time. Otherwise, they're literally called magic cookies. And it's like, this might be a regional thing, but I have never heard them refer to that. You call them edibles, pot brownies, hash brownies, or like maybe you'll call them a magic brownie, a magic cookie. But where I'm from, when you call something a magic brownie, you're talking about mushrooms. Like you're talking about like psychedelics when you're talking about magic brownies, magic cookies. Otherwise, you just call them edibles or pot brownies. Like, again, this could be a regional thing, but when you combine the interchanging of blunts and joints, when you call it a weed store instead of a dispensary, like all these things together, it just kind of, I was like, girl, have you ever smoked weed before? Are you trying to get hip with the kids? And I don't know, again, it could be a generational thing. Maybe she's older. I don't know. I'm in my 30s, so like I feel like I'm old enough. Like I don't know all the new hip lingo that the kids are using these days, but I do know that a blunt and a joint are 2 different things. I do know it's called a dispensary, and I do know that magic brownies are with mushrooms. So Who knows? Who knows? Whatever. This was like just a stupid little thing that I was kind of annoyed about, that I was like, oh, that seems pretty, you seem like a narc. That's how I felt about it. I don't know. I could be off base. Who cares, right? So their nothing meaningless road trip finally comes to an end, and they reach Port Mercy, Maine, and they get to the Spindrift house. We see something weird happening with Harlow here when they're meeting the two representatives of two of the families, the Uptons. Ooh, spooky, spooky. There's nobody there for the Uptons. It's only the other two families that have sent representatives, right? So, anyway, she's like, when they meet these two people, she dissociates hardcore. Like, she loses a huge chunk of indeterminate amount of time. We don't know exactly how much time she lost. We just know that she checked out, and by the time she checked back into reality, a lot of shit happened. A lot of shit went down. Basically, they figured out all the logistics of the contracts and all this other stuff. But she was gone for all this. She was like, so we're like, ooh, something's happening. By something's happening, I mean absolutely fucking nothing happens. Okay, shit is gonna pop off soon. We know this. The majority of the time they're in the house, though, nothing actually happens. Literally nothing. It goes from like they're there, they're spending the night. Harlow kind of harps again about how Kevin is her brother and how much she loves him. Again, telling us, not showing us. And she keeps going back and forth, like, oh my God, this was something that kept happening where she was like, oh, I want to leave, but I need to stay. I need to stay. I want to leave, but I have to stay. I want to go, but I have to stay. And it's like, uh-huh, sure. She talks a lot about how she has to wear glasses. Like, her wearing glasses to see is like a huge plot point. It is a very important storytelling device in this book, that she wears glasses because it's like the second or third night that they're there, she wakes up after again having this weird dissociative episode, and oh shit, her sight is perfect now. She can see.
Hey, my glasses! I can't see without them.
Do you understand why this was reading like YA? Does this sound like a fucking adult horror book to you? Oh my God, buddy. Oh, okay. Anyway, so Harlow is the one that is finding all of these clues. She's the one that's coming across, a whole bunch of stuff, that the secret passageways and the creepy crawly basement that apparently nobody has ever found before. And they get down to this creepy basement, and there's a giant solid wooden desk. And they're doing this in the middle of the night, by the way. And so Addison, who's the ringleader, right? Instead of waiting until morning when there's more light or that, it's less scary, she's like, oh, I have this idea. How about Kevin, Andy, you guys grab this heavy ass giant fucking desk and carry it up all these stairs that Grant made a point to talk about how they'd been going down the stairs for so long that it felt that they were halfway back to Port Mercy, right? Girl, Addison's like, yeah, let's carry this giant fucking desk all the way upstairs. So Harlow takes the lead, and then it's the two boys carrying the desk, and then Addison is bringing up the rear, right? So Harlow gets to the top of the stairs before everybody else, and she has this weird conversation with the ghost of the house. We don't actually know who it is. I'll get into that in a freaking second. Anyway, so Harlow is having this imaginary, or it's a real conversation, but with this ghost that is in her mind. And then we hear a giant thud, and whoop, Andy fell. Andy's down. He fell all the way back down the stairs. So the rest of the group runs down there. They go to check on him, and, he has blood rushing from his head. He's unconscious, but he's breathing. Psych! He's dead. And we find this out. We learn this the next morning when he's being possessed by this. When he's being possessed by the ghost. So we're toward the end of the book now, as you would know if you've read this book. I hope you've read this book, or hopefully you don't care about spoilers, because damn, we're too far into it now. I should have prefaced that. I might put in a fucking disclaimer at the beginning. Okay. All we've seemed to uncover is that the house is haunted. Okay. We kind of could have figured that out from literally the opening chapter where we're talking about this house. And we still don't even know by what. We don't know how it's haunted. So Harlow's family history is deeply ingrained in the history of this house. Eventually, the ghost explains that she needs to take sides, and during this point, the ghost possesses Harlow and the ghost ends up killing Addison. This was the only part of the book that felt very adult to me. I enjoyed this death scene very much. I will say I'll give Grant credit where credit is due, okay? I did enjoy this death scene. It felt like the most adult writing in the whole fucking book. Here's my thing. When Harlow puts on her glasses earlier that morning to look at Andy as he's being possessed by this ghost, she sees, through one lens, she sees this human man that resembles her. He has the same type of hair, the same like colored skin. So we are assuming that he is an ancestor of hers. And then in the other lens, she is seeing this weird sea creature, fish person covered in scales. I have no fucking idea what that was about. I don't know. Still don't know. Like I'm failing to, so she sees this ghost that is actually possessing her friend. But later on in the book, it's like referring to itself as like the ghost of the house or something. Like it's not a ghost of her ancestor. And if it is, we never find out which ancestor. We never find out who the fuck this guy is that is possessing Andy's corpse. So I'm like super lost on that, okay? But again, then the author goes on and Harlow's rambling about how Kevin is her brother and she loves him. She spent so much of this book talking about how much Harlow loves Kevin like a brother and blah blah, like over and over and over again, but couldn't just extend an extra few pages explaining the origin of this ghost or who the fuck this ghost is supposed to be. I don't know, man. Fuck it. So we learned technically that these three families that are fighting over the ownership of the house have this weird incestuous contract with one another where, like children of two of the families will get married and have a kid, and then that kid will get married to a child of the third family, and then they'll have a kid, and then that child will then marry another. So it's like just weirdly, they're just passing the property back and forth to each other's children. They have this weird incestuous situation happening. Did not understand this at all. Victoria's journal was supposed to clear this up. It just left me with more questions. I was like, what the fuck are we talking about? Also, why does it matter who owns the house then if you guys just keep passing it back and forth to each other in your weird little incest families? Like, what the fuck are you talking? That made the whole plot very pointless. Yeah, so I didn't get that at all. And then the spirit of the house at the end of the book is like, tell us who we belong to. Because again, is this the spirit of the house itself? Is this the spirit of one of her ancestors? I don't know. But the house is like, we need to know who we belong to. We need to know who owns the house. And this is implying again that this ghost is not an actual person. It's the spirit of the house. So of course Harlow is like, I read my ancestor Victoria's journal and I'm the rightful heir of the house. Shock. Who could have seen this happening? Girl, get the fuck out of my face. And then, of course, during Harlow's explanation of how she even came to the conclusion that she is the rightful owner of the house, she's like, oh yeah, my mother, who is Victoria's daughter or granddaughter or whatever, who lived for a century and then she gave birth to me because we're actually sea creature people or something. And again, this is all very confusing because now you're throwing a lot of new information right at the end of this book. You mean that her mother was alive for over a century and was like still, because again, they're like these sea creature people who are tied to the ocean but also tied to this house, and they're like giving birth to each other incestually and then like going and returning to the ocean to go serve their lord or something. And it's like that, then of course then it's like, what the fuck? Because Harlow then, she's like laying in bed and she wakes up, she's like, oh, I know who the lord is now. I serve Lord Duma or Donnie or Dover or whatever the fuck his name was. And that's it. That's the only mention of him, because again, this is the last chapter. This is the literally 2 seconds before the book ends, and you're throwing out this huge major character of who you serve. I don't know if this was meant to be setting up for a second book. As far as I know, this is a standalone novel. So right at the end of the book, we're introduced to like, oh, it's not just a ghost haunting this. It's like there are a bunch of sea creature people that have that keep giving birth to each other with each other, and then they assume their final form and return to the ocean. But we don't ever know, aside from that brief glimpse that she gets from looking at the ghost of whoever's possessing Andy, we don't know anything about these sea creatures. It's literally just thrown half-assed right at the end of this fucking book. And you're like, what? What's wrong with just a normal, regular, schmegular ghost story, bro? Why are you introducing all these weird elements that you're not explaining at all? Oh my god, it pissed me off. Like, how are you're gonna throw out this major character, the lord of whoever you serve, like right at the end of the book with no explanation at all as to anything, and you just never elaborate. Like I said, maybe this was setting up for a second book, but if it was, like, I am not reading it. Fuck that. So that's that. The book then ends with Harlow sending Kevin on his way with the $3.5 million prize and wiping his memory, which never goes into that, never fucking explains how that's even a possibility. How did they wipe his memory? Magic? Like, what? Doesn't matter because we'll never find out. And he just forgets about her. It says the further away he gets, the more he forgets about Harlow's existence. So just wiped the, whole thing from his memory. So what, he's going to go home now? He's going to return to their town in Chicago with all three with Harlow, Addison, and Andy, the two twins being dead now, buried in the back plot of the house, the graveyard or whatever. So, like, Kevin's supposed to return home and be like, what? Oh, yeah, all my friends are missing. Sorry. Who are those people? I don't know because my memory's been wiped. But again, it's literally a offhand fucking comment right at the end. So we'll never know what that explanation is. And then it's like Harlow, being the sleuth mystery solver that she is, she's like, oh, I have cousins out there who don't know about their sea creature genes, so I'm going to bring them home. And that's how the book ends, y'all. That's literally how the book ends. And you're like, this has to be a setup for a second book, right? Even so, this book was so lackluster that I wouldn't even bother reading the second book. This book had no substance. The characters were all flat, all one-dimensional. Their dynamics were non-existent. It was all the author did was tell us, never fucking showed us. There was barely any exposition to ground you in the story. Like, look, I don't like exposition-heavy books, but we needed a little bit of something in here, okay? This book, we had nothing to attach ourselves to. They just moved from one place to the next and it was like the author was just trying to rush through it and get through it as fast as she possibly could. I think this book is like under 200 pages or something. It's like 197, something like that. So it's like you could have taken a little bit of extra time, a little bit of extra care to actually immerse the reader in the story instead of just like shoving us off into the next direction that you barely get into, you barely explain, you show us all of this lore, all of this history, and you don't actually explain any of it. There was no character development whatsoever. Everybody is pretty much exactly, the twins are dead. Kevin is pretty much the exact same person that he was when he started, and Harlow has some answers now. That's pretty much the only thing that gets cleared up. But you know what? She's the only one that has answers. The rest of us we got nothing but questions. She's the only one that's got the answers. This book was utter dog shit. I'm so sorry that I hated it this much. And normally, like, I can find some positive things. Outside of Addison's death scene, this book was atrocious. The only positive thing about it was how positively terrible it was. God damn. Okay, let me say a nice thing about it. The only thing that was nice about it was that it was under 200 pages, and so I didn't waste any more of my life than was absolutely necessary taking my time to read it. This author wrote a terrible, boring, unconvincing story and presented it in a juvenile way to an adult audience. Anyway, if you liked this book, I'm sorry for shit-talking it so much. Maybe get better taste in books. I don't know. That was mean. I'm just kidding. If you liked it, that's cool. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Genuinely, like, if you got something out of this, that's awesome. I just want to end this by saying that I am aware that the author was trying to create this, like, eldritch terror, cosmic horror meets the Scooby Gang kind of situation. I just think it fell so flat. I think that instead of creating this ominous sense of like, this thing is so terrifying and this is so horrifying that I could not possibly explain to you how absolutely scary this was, it felt more like, hey, here's this monster thing. I'm not even gonna fucking tell you anything about it. Didn't even try to articulate how absolutely horrifying and psychologically frightening it was. It was just like a monster that was just kind of like, oh yeah, by the way, here's that. Here's some family history, here's some family lore. Not even going to get into any explanation about it. Just take it at face value. I know it leaves you with a million questions, but it is what it is. That's how this felt. I did not like that. I did not think it gave Eldritch terror. I think it gave, like, I was too lazy to explain anything. And I know I have addressed the author a few times in this video, like, specifically, but I do want to be clear that I have nothing against this author. I do not think this author is a bad person. I just think that this was not a very well written book. And from what I know, from what I've heard, this author has written a lot of good books. So maybe this was just a bad introduction for me. Maybe, this is the first thing I've read by her. I'm not sure I'd give her another shot per se, but this is all just to say that, like, I don't think that she's a bad person. I don't think that she's even bad at writing. I think, like, I should say her prose itself, the writing style itself, the words, the vocabulary she was using was fine. It was good. It was well written in that sense. But as far as laying out a story goes, I get that this was a novella, but this needed a bit more work. And I think it just fell flat for me. Now, if you have read this book, like, please get in my comments and tell me I'm not crazy for hating this much, or get in my comments and tell me that I'm absolutely insane for hating it this much and that I must have missed something that everybody else who liked it understood that I didn't. Either way, let me know what you think about this book. And if you have seen any of my other videos, can you tell me, did this method of review hit better for you? Like, is this a much better way for me to just kind of go through the book step by step, scene by scene, and just kind of give my thoughts about it? Or do you like that whole me giving an overview and then kind of diving in to specific elements that I want to talk about? Let me know. Let me know, because I feel like this actually kind of works a bit better for me going through step by step. So yeah, until next time, guys.